Hey guys, how are you? Zach from Zach Loves Books. It's good to see you all again. Welcome back to the channel. I'm glad you're liking the content. This is part of my Jamaica series in Montego Bay. I'm just kidding, I don't have a Jamaica series. I'm only gonna have like 3 videos, but I'm here right now in Montego Bay, Jamaica. The sun is like shining, you know, it's hot. The weather is beautiful. You can see I have a nice background behind me, and I'm here to review the books that I read here. The book that I just finished reading is called The White Witch of Rose Hall by Herbert G. Lisser, published in 1958, reprinted a lot of times, and it was an amazing book. I loved everything about it. I love the characters, I love the setting, I love the story, I loved you know, the climax. There was an amazing climax, the closure. It was all there for me. If you watch some of my other videos on the channel, I'm gonna put on my sunglasses because the sun is in my face. But if you've watched some of the other videos on my channel, then you'll know that I'm into the dark fiction, the horror fiction. This is like dark. This was scary. I wouldn't say it was horror, but it was a dark story. It was set in, you know, I like books set in Victorian times, ghost stories. This is set in colonial times, sort of the same thing, except not in England. Set in a plantation house in Montego Bay, Jamaica, where I am right now. Rose Hall is actually here. It's like 5 minutes away from here. I would go visit it, but you know, it's kind of expensive. But in any case, I want to get into this review because this is going to be a full review. It's going to be full of spoilers, just so heads up in case, you know, you watch till the end. This is more for people who have read the entire book, or if you don't think that you're ever going to read this book and pick it up, but you want to know, you know, what it's all about and you don't mind the spoilers, and go ahead and watch it. But if you are going to pick it up, don't watch it, because I'm going to literally go through chapter by chapter and explain to you everything that happened, just because I really enjoyed this. I could have probably read it in, you know, 2 days, but you know, I've been sunning on the beach, enjoying the sun, getting my tan on, and I want to savor every word. And I mean, this is the kind of book where it's like every sentence is beautiful, you know. It's written in an old English style, so if you like that kind of thing, like a Charles Dickens type of prose, you know, old English style, chivalry, you're gonna really love this book. And that's what I really loved about it. Not only was the prose amazing, the characters were amazing. There's about 4 or 5 main characters. Also the settings, the way Herbert G. Lisser painted the setting in the tropics was just amazing. You know, he really vividly painted the picture. And if you've never been here, you get a sense of what the tropics are like. And then if you have been here, like how I'm here, you're like, yeah, he was spot on. I mean, it's hot here, it's humid. You don't know how people can work here, much less on a plantation in the 1800s. But yeah, let's get right into the story, all right? Yeah, so basically, White Witch of Rose Hall starts off. I'm gonna kind of probably go through it chapter by chapter. So Robert Rutherford is an English man. He's like, gets sent to Rose Hall in Jamaica, Montego Bay, by his father in the 1800s. He's going there, his job will be as a bookkeeper, but when he gets there, he realizes that they don't really need a bookkeeper. They have 2 other bookkeepers, and you know, so basically they put him to do other jobs. And you know, he's not really, he's kind of confused about it, but you know, it's a new job. His dad could have sent him to Barbados, but instead he sends him to Jamaica, where I think it's a bit harsher. He doesn't know what he's walking into. All he knows is that he goes to this plantation house. He doesn't know the rules. He meets a few people, his boss. They tell him to watch out for himself, careful what he says. He's the new guy, but he's pretty confident. And you know, he meets another bookkeeper, and he meets another overseer. That's the first 3 characters we get. And then, you know, he gets an introduction to what he's got to do. In the first night, he's on watch at where they do make the rum and put it into the barrels. He's got to watch to make sure that the slaves, you know, don't steal it. And there's a lot of slavery in here, so if you're not comfortable with that, don't read the book. But you know, so he's kind of angry because he's like, I'm not doing any bookkeeping. He also watches like somebody get flogged, you know, flogged and like whipped with a whip because, you know, and it's supposed to send a message to other slaves that the mistress of the plantation, Annie Palmer, that's one of the characters, she's one of the main characters, is in charge and everybody's afraid of her. So Robert Rutherford witnesses this, and it's kind of jarring for him. Then we find out that, you know, he meets two women, and basically they're both beautiful. There's a lot of racial kind of tension in this book, and obviously it's the 1800s on the slave plantation. There's going to be racial overtones, but basically the mistress of the plantation is Annie Palmer. He falls in love with her when he sees her, but then he also falls in love with a housekeeper, someone who's sent to, you know, help him keep his stuff in the where he's staying. But then when he meets Annie Palmer, now Robert Rutherford is a dashing young English gentleman, handsome, tall, confident. So when he meets the mistress of Rose Hall, she falls in love with him. He falls in love with her because apparently she's, you know, one of the most beautiful white women, you know, in Montego Bay at that time, and she's powerful. She has no husband. She's in this great house. And, you know, she invites him up for dinner, and she's alone in this big house, but she's like the boss on two different plantations. And right away they start like flirting, and they profess their feelings for each other. But at the same time, when he goes back, he falls in love with this brown girl, a black girl, who, you know, lives on the plantation. She falls in love with him. So he's torn between two women. So it is like a love story. So if you like a love story set in, you know, colonial times or slave times in Jamaica, you will like this. So Millicent, who's the, you know, black girl, slave girl, well, actually she's not a slave, she's free. So just so you know that, she wants to get with Robert, and it's weird, she wants to marry him, like she's in love with him. But so is Annie, who's the mistress of the plantation house. So that's where the conflict comes in. And then Millie sets her, you know, hooks on him. She's like, I have to have him. And then when Annie finds out, Annie Palmer, that Millie likes Robert, it comes to a head. And because Millie is free, you know, they have it out. And then after that, you know, Annie doesn't like Millie. And also there's an overseer named Ashman who's been sleeping with Annie. He's in love with Annie, and he sees that Robert likes Annie, and he is also, there's conflict there. He doesn't want Annie to get with Robert. Robert notices that Ashman is jealous of him, you know, and then there's another bookkeeper named Burbridge who also is in the mix and notices that this crazy love triangle is going on. And at one point Annie even professes that she loves Robert and she will do whatever, you know, to be with him. And Robert finds out that, and she actually confesses to him that she's had 3 husbands and that they all died mysterious deaths, and that he'll probably hear that she killed her husbands. And he's kind of taken aback that she would admit this to him. You know, but she wants to get it all out of the way because she wants him to come and stay with her up in the great house. But he doesn't want to do that because, you know, he just started working there. And also, you know, he likes the brown girl, Millie. And Annie can sense that. Then we find out, I don't know if it's at this point of the story, we find out that Annie Palmer was trained in the voodoo arts. In Jamaica, they call it obia, witchcraft, by a Haitian lady growing up in Haiti, but then she was brought over to Jamaica, etc. she married Robert Palmer, I think his name was, not the singer. And then he died a mysterious death. She had 2 other husbands. They died mysterious deaths. And people talk in Montego Bay saying that she's the White Witch of Rose Hall and that she has these powers. So one night while they're trying to, you know, set an example for, I think, a slave who stole some rum or something, or somebody gets flogged, they're out in the field and she makes like a 3-hooved horse or 3-footed horse appear out of somewhere, and all the slaves and everybody freaks out, of the people that see it, and it just kind of instills and reaffirms the fear that they have of her. So you get this sense that she's just not, you know, the regular old white lady of the house, that she's somebody that has powers, like she's an obia woman, obia meaning witchcraft. So yeah, that's where you're like, okay, wow, we're dealing with a woman who's a witch, who is now jealous of, you know, the newly hired bookkeeper who's in love with the slave girl. And then one of the first twists in the story, you know, that we get is when Annie finds out that Robert's in love with Millie, it makes her furious, and she's going to put a stop to it. So, you know, and also we find out that Millie has a grandfather who's a voodoo priest, an obia man named Taku. He's supposed to be powerful. And after Annie has it out with Millie in an argument, and Millie like talks to Annie, however she does, because she's a free woman. But I mean, she's not above flogging or anything, but she takes off. Taku takes her to the villages behind the plantation where all the slaves live. And then Annie goes looking for her one night, and you know, she's being hidden in a cottage, and Annie does some kind of ritual through the door with a child's skull, and like a drawing of a coffin, and you hear a shriek, and then the next day we find out that Millie's been cursed. So, and then Robert makes his way over a couple of days later to see her, and she's all frantic, and she says that Annie Palmer put this curse on her and that she's dying. So then later on, you know, Robert rides over to the village with one of the newly hired bookkeepers, a guy named Ryder, and they know that Taku, which is Millie's grandfather, is a powerful obia man, like a witch doctor, and he's going to try to do this exorcism to get the death curse off of her. So they ride over in the night, you know, where they shouldn't be, and they don't really want anyone to see them, and then from the shadows of the forest they watch this exorcism happen, you know, and it's really freaky. It's kind of like The Believers. I don't know if you've ever seen that scene in The Believers where the voodoo guy like does that. He does some kind of exorcism, or not an exorcism, but he does one of these things where everybody is in a trance. This is an amazing scene in the books where, you know, Taku, there's drums going, it's ominous, you know, he's doing this exorcism, people are in a trance, they're dancing about, they bring out like a goat or something that gets sacrificed, and, you know, the blood spills all over her to get this, you know, death curse off of her. But while that's happening, you know, right near the end, this big giant bull apparition with fiery eyes and, you know, spewing fire out of its nostrils comes out of nowhere, you know, like an apparition. It's a giant, and all the slaves just take off in fear for their lives, and then they see Annie Palmer step out of the shadows in all black, this little evil looking woman, and even Taku, who's supposed to be this great witch doctor, is afraid too. And Robert finds out about this curse, and he wants to help Millie because he's in love with her, you know. But he's torn because he's also in love with Annie, or Annie's in love with him, so it's like a love triangle. But, you know, he even confronts Annie about it, and she says, okay, you know, I'll help you. I'm going to help her, you know, because Millie now thinks she's dying because she has this curse on her, but she doesn't help her. And so Robert goes, okay, I'm going to help her then. So he goes to the slave village with Ryder. And, you know, at this point, they're fed up with being in Jamaica. They're like, after this, we're getting out of here. We're quitting. And Robert takes a regular doctor to go see Millie. The doctor can't do anything for her. He says he's seen this kind of thing before, and that usually here, because people are so superstitious, once the curse is on you, people can die because they think they're dying. You know, that their heart just stops. Like, that's how strong the fear of witchcraft is in these islands, Jamaica included. But Robert's not afraid. You know, he's a Christian and he's strong, and he even goes to confront Annie, and he's like, I'm not afraid of you. In fact, I'm actually going to go and rat you out to the authorities in Montego Bay, you know, that you're this white woman practicing obia, and that you're probably responsible for the deaths of your previous 3 husbands here at Rose Hall. And she's taken aback. She's shocked that, because nobody ever talks to her like that. No one's ever threatened her. And this is another white person threatening to out her and, you know, try to get her charged, hanged, sent to the gallows. And someone that she loves, and that someone that's supposed to love her suddenly turning on her over a slave girl, and she can't believe it. So then she turns on him and says, I hate you now, you know, and I'm going to do everything to destroy you and Millie together. You know, she's going to die anyway, and you'll never be together, and then I'm going to kill you. So, you know, in the end, Millie ends up dying, and she also arranges for somebody to shoot Robert. And then at the same time, at Rose Hall and other plantations and all around the islands, there's been a lot of, you know, slave revolts happening. And it's been rumored that after Christmas, that the slaves aren't going to work. And so all the white overseers and the slave owners and the plantation house owners are scared, because they're like, is there going to be an uprising here at Rose Hall? You know? So not only is Annie dealing with these personal love issues, you know, to do with Robert, she's also dealing with a potential uprising that's going to happen. So everything kind of comes to a head. And then Christmas happens. Robert and Ryder are like, we're going to quit. We're leaving Jamaica. And he tells Annie. And around the same time when they're going back to the, you know, the great plantation house, they're on the way up there. They notice some movement in the shadows. And they, some slaves go into the great house, and they take Annie like hostage. They put their arms around her, cover her mouth, and, you know, it's Taku, it's Millie's grandfather, there to avenge the death of his granddaughter, Millie. Not through witchcraft, but literally with a bunch of slaves who have machetes, who are ready to kill, because these uprisings are going to happen. And he doesn't end up hacking her to death, but, you know, he's planned it out with a lot of other people, and he won't hurt Robert and Ryder because they tried to help Millie. So he's like, you know, you guys stay out of this, but this is between me and Annie. And in the end, he ends up choking her to death. You know, so he chokes her, and they throw her body on the bed, and, you know, it's like this is the beginning of an uprising. And then all the white overseers and all the white people left on the plantation realize they have to come up with their guns and take control again before there's a complete revolt, and they burn down the house and everything. But by the same token, at the same time, Robert and Ryder end up leaving, but Ryder leaves first, and on his way out of the plantation, he gets shot in the chest and he dies. And we find out later that that bullet was meant for Robert Rutherford and not for Ryder. Only he took the bullet. So in the end, Robert Rutherford ends up leaving Jamaica, and you know, he says, I'm never coming back. And so Annie dies, and they say that until this day, the ghost of Annie Palmer haunts Rose Hall Estate, which is here in Jamaica, and maybe the ghost of her husband's. So if you come to Montego Bay, Jamaica, you can get a tour. Yeah, it's hot. Great story. Hard to find. Try to get it on EA Books. You know, maybe order a physical copy if you can. Something you want to read as a physical copy. Maybe it's a keeper if you're into ghost stories. Yeah, come see the Rose Hall Estate here in Montego Bay, Jamaica. For tourists, it's like, I think, $30 per person, $50 per person if you're watching the night tour. And yeah, great ghost story, and just a great book. I give it like a 9 out of 10. All right, so that's it for me now. If you guys like the content, don't forget to like and subscribe. Zach Loves Books, and we'll see you when I'm back in Toronto, guys. All right, take care.